now I am going to pop you out full screen. Okay, rock on. Okay, I'm going to hand you over to Ashley now, who's our president, and let her kind of go from here.
All right, thanks. Hi.
Can you figure out how to get the exit full screen off?
Oh, it's off.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome to ONA Mizzou. We're talking with Patrick Rollens with TribLocal. So I'm just going to kind of let him take it away. As you can see, it's a Skype session because he's not in Columbia. So Patrick, whenever you're ready.
Sure. Well, I was just going to talk a little bit about what we're up to at TribLocal, which is it's part of the Chicago Tribune. It's 3 or 4 years old, but it's operated as a like a hyperlocal startup for the first few years. And just since summer 2009, we really started investing in it and growing the network. And the reason that I was invited to talk to you guys is because I met some ONA Mizzou members. I'm an alum myself, graduated in 2004. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, the microphone stopped working, so I'm rocking the earbuds with the built-in microphone, so hopefully that'll work. But I met some folks at the ONA conference, and we were just talking a little bit specifically about community engagement, because that's basically my full-time job with TribLocal. My title is community producer, which means that I'm a web producer, so I sort of program various websites on TribLocal.com, but I also interact with citizen journalists and invite them to contribute to the website. And the cool thing about TribLocal is it goes beyond just web participation. We actually publish a print edition each week that is about 3/4 or so staff journalism and another 25% citizen contributions. And these are, again, just folks who are plugged into various activities and organizations around town who want to participate and join in the journalism process. And so, again, my job is to work with those folks, sometimes literally talking to them on the phone, working them through the sign-up process, if, for example, they're a senior citizen or something, and answering any questions they might have about the website, sometimes coaching them on writing, but a lot of times people just sort of jump right in and just deliver what they want to write without any sort of questions about that. But I'd really love to hear, if you guys have any questions or anything as well about what I do at TribLocal. And if Ashley or Jen has any questions too, feel free to shout them out. I'm also keeping an eye on I'm on Twitter. That's a big part of my week as well, is social media. I spend pretty much my entire shift on Twitter, and we have a nice, thriving Facebook page. And we use it to share not just the breaking news that our staff reporters turn in, but we also try to highlight our citizen contributions, because that's one of the most exciting parts about TribLocal and being part of it, is that you get to publish if you're a member of the community, you get to publish your stories right alongside staff reporters at TribLocal. Anybody have any questions before I keep going? Let me see if I'm going to try to do my share screen thing here. I was just reading about how to do that. 1 second. Share screen. Do I want to do it? Yes, I do want to. Can you guys see my screen? Yes. Okay, good. Now you see yourselves. So, again, so TribLocal, this is what we call the splash page. Can everyone see that?
No. We think we're frozen.
Oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't do share screen.
Yeah, you're not showing through.
Okay, I'll stop screen sharing. And I'll go back to just regular video. Do you see me?
Yep, there you are.
Okay, well, so if you can see it, what we have for TribLocal is...
why don't you share the URL with us, because just about everybody has a laptop or an iPad in front of them.
Great. TribLocal.com, TribLocal. And so it's part of the Chicago Tribune's news gathering network. It's part of the Chicago Tribune company. But as you'll see when you go to the site, it has its own kind of branding and presentation. And it has its own little logo and color palette and web design and all that stuff. So the main URL, TribLocal.com, is what we call the splash page. And as you can see, there is no news on it whatsoever. What this is a portal to guide you further into the site. And what is behind this little gray box is a constantly changing, well, not constantly, once per day it changes, photo from contributors. Again, these are folks who have uploaded their stuff on TribLocal.com. This photo could be used in print. We decided to highlight it for the website. And if you click in the little text box and start typing something, or click Find Your Town on the list, you'll see the list of towns in suburban Chicago that we cover. This is not an exhaustive list, unfortunately. We sort of had to pick we picked the most interesting / highest revenue potential towns to get started a couple of years ago when TribLocal first got started. And we've expanded from there, I think, using those same criteria. And I get emails, we all get emails every week from people who live in towns that aren't covered by TribLocal who want a TribLocal in their town. Oftentimes, these are folks whose local paper has closed down for some reason or ceased publication, or maybe it's spotty, they don't have enough resources to devote to reporting. So they want us to come into their town, not just for the reporting that our staffers will bring, but also for the citizen journalism platform that the TribLocal website has. So the two main town sites that I work on is the Oak Park and River Forest site, which is on that big list, and also the Elmhurst town site. And again, these are just towns outside of suburban Chicago. I'm sure some of you guys are from that area. And so my job on a daily basis is to work with the Tribune editors and reporters to highlight the stories that come in on an hourly basis. These reporters have been told to write 3 to 4 stories a day. Just quick hits, little things, just take the pulse of the community. And so those stories will get published kind of throughout the day as the editors get to them. And my job is to program them into the main homepage module, which you'll see if you click on the Oak Park River Forest site. There's that little collection of headlines there, kind of top of the page, which is supposed to look like the above the fold section of a newspaper, little web design there. And so that's called the centerpiece. I program that thing, switch stories out, track the traffic and hits of the stories that are in there, find new ways to present what we've got. I do that throughout the day for not just Oak Park and Elmhurst, but also about 15 other sites. 15, 10, something like that. And the idea being that we will have the story, in our centerpiece for our readers to see within minutes of it being published. That's the expectation. Because that's what market research has told us, is that our readers really want immediate news, and that's kind of what we're trying to deliver here. And so from there, let me go make sure I'm on the same page as you guys. Oak Park River Forest. So as you start to scroll down through the site from the centerpiece, you pass that green bar, and then you get into what we call the river, which is on the left. It's a river of news. It's not just staff stories from Jim Jaworski, but as you get down, you'll start to see, well, actually not on this page, but again, our citizen contributor stuff appears right there as well, right alongside Jim's stuff, which is pretty cool. It's a nice mix. It's identified as being, quote, from the community. That's the little tag we use above the story, so that everyone knows it's not from a Tribune reporter. But at the same time, it for a brief period of time, gets top billing on the site, because when it gets published, it gets bumped to the top, and if you happen to look at the site at that particular moment in time, you'll see a bit of citizen journalism right at the top of the Oak Park page, which is really cool. And when we add the story to the top of the river, as we call it, an automatic email gets sent out to that contributor, which thanks them for their contribution and lets them know that we're using the story in a prominent place on the website, which is designed to kind of increase excitement about the TribLocal experience. So again, throughout the week, I'm working with the reporters to find their stories and put them on the site, working with citizen contributors, answering any number of questions that they might have about web publishing and that sort of thing, digital photography. People frequently have questions about what types of image files we can handle. So I'm always answering questions about JPEGs and image compression. And then about 2 days out of each week, I make a big list of the stories, citizen journalism stories that we think we might want to use in print. And I export those through our website and get them into the hands of the print designers. So there's actually a print component to this job as well. because the print product makes up kind of a huge portion of our revenue, and also just it's an exciting part of TribLocal because it's something that our competitors aren't doing. They're not investing in sort of a print distribution network. And let me tell you, when you publish like a citizen journalism, snapshot of say 20 honor roll students receiving awards at a local high school, you can bet that 20 grandmothers are going to cut out that photo and put it on the refrigerator, because it appeared in print in a product with the Chicago Tribune logo on it. I see a whole bunch of tweets going on in the background here. Oh, hey, cool. I'm being live tweeted. Attention. So there's the working with citizen journalists. There's a huge social media component. If any of you guys follow my Twitter account, it's at TribLocalPat. I always say that it's a fairly boring Twitter account unless you happen to live in Elmhurst, Oak Park, and the surrounding communities, because I don't tweet about journalism. I tweet for journalism, for my job. So I don't really spend a lot of time tweeting like pointer columns and talking about new, mobile apps and stuff. But I do spend a lot of time tweeting headlines about it, because the idea is that I want to reach people in Oak Park, people in Elmhurst, and that's a challenge too, because I can't just sort of seek them out to follow me. I have to start tweeting good headlines and hope that the existing networks out there will retweet me and that sort of thing. So I apologize in advance if anybody starts following me. You're certainly free to unfollow me in a week if you don't want to get Oak Park and Elmhurst headlines filling up your thing. So is there anything else I can talk about more specifically? There was citizen journalism, social media, the print web connection, the larger Chicago Tribune news gathering network, and how we fit into that. We haven't, TribLocal has not at all replaced the suburban bureaus in the Chicago Tribune. Those still exist, and TribLocal reporters appear in the Chicago Tribune newspaper and vice versa. It's a different network though. TribLocal reporters really try to dig into hyperlocal issues. Just today I saw a website or a story on the Western Springs website. The headline was something like "Village considering 4 possible trees as its official Christmas tree." So very specific stories. That's something that only Western Springs people would want to read, and that's a good thing. That means the reporter is digging in, finding these issues, sitting through the long board meetings, that sort of thing. Did anybody have a question?
That's a question that I have. And I'm from a small town, so I'm wondering, when you're doing such hyperlocal news, it's in places where it seems like things are the same year after year. How do you find those stories? How do you really dig in and find stories that are different?
From what I've seen working with my colleague Jim, who covers Oak Park really well, it's just a matter of being at these meetings, developing networks and relationships with the people who show up at the meetings, the elected officials, the folks who always choose to speak in the open forum, that sort of thing. And then you just become part of their network. And they reach out to you when there's a hot button community issue that might be coming up, and they want to sort of tip you off when things might be coming along down the pike that you should be keeping an eye on. Does that answer your question a little bit? Because a lot of stuff is a little bit repetitive, but again, we're a little bit unique in that we're outside of Chicago, so all sorts of regional stuff affects us. We keep a really close eye on what the counties are doing, the collar counties around Chicago, because there's politics there in the counties. There are a myriad of little sort of political bodies, from fire protection districts to park districts to township governments, and all of these. Some of these behave very differently from region to region, and all of them are generating news on kind of a hyperlocal level. And it's just a matter of plugging in at the right time to get that news.
How did you recruit citizens to actually, want to, report to you guys or turn stuff in for consideration on TribLocal?
That is an excellent question. It is literally pounding the pavement, feet on the street kind of stuff. I launched the Oak Park site for TribLocal. It didn't exist before I was hired to start it. And what I was told to do and what I did was call up my local libraries, call up my park districts, ask to sit down for 15 minutes with the directors and the board members. And I gave them a pitch on TribLocal. I said, hey, you know how in the past you have emailed your press releases to, sort of a bottomless hole of email address? Well, here's a chance to post them online and to really get your message out in a venue that also includes a print product as well. And it's still an evolving process. The main high school in Oak Park, I've pitched on TribLocal, and I've described the benefits, and I've said, hey, we'd love to hear about your band camps and your, drama productions and stuff, but the PR person for their school does not want to use the site, and, I can't force her to. So again, there are some folks who don't want to, but the citizen journalists who do have derived a lot of satisfaction from it. I've gotten a lot of thank you notes, and a lot of them are people who like to write and would consider themselves writers, as hobbyists, and so they see this as just a way to kind of get involved. We have people who blog on our site, and we have people who submit stories on behalf of Boy Scout troops. And again, these are people most likely who had some sort of contact with someone like me, a community producer who was at a library event or a farmer's market or something. Or maybe their friend had a good TribLocal experience or something. In our print edition, we include tons and tons of house ads about how to contribute that include painstaking detail, like here's the steps you take to contribute on TribLocal. And so maybe they saw that. But one of the big things that I do is, I guess you could call it customer service, because the TribLocal process is such that you can sign up for an account and start posting immediately. There is no approval process. So what that means is that every morning I could conceivably see a new posting from a new contributor. My job is to email that person, reach out to them and say, hey, thanks for posting. Did you have any questions? I see that your story mentions whatever, the fall festival that's coming up next weekend. We'd sure love to use this in print. And I ask them for their byline information. And so once you kind of get a contributor caught up in that process, make them feel like they're part of a network and that there's someone on the other end of the computer who sees their stuff and cares, that does a lot as far as customer service and making them come back and want to be part of it again. Does that help you?
Yeah, one thing I just heard, you said there is no approval process when somebody posts something. How do you monitor that for something that shouldn't be there?
Right, so we're always monitoring our postings, and we're always looking again at postings that we saw initially and let slip through. So if there's anything offensive, of course we take it down, and there are people looking at the site 24 hours a day that will catch that. So, and there's also a language filter too, so you can't get cuss words in there. But again, so anybody can sign up. So what that means is sometimes you'll have someone sign up who maybe shouldn't be posting for this town because they work in another town or something like that. And so you've got to kind of steer them to the right town site to get started. But there really hasn't been a problem as far as content, bad content or anything like that. Mostly it's just been making sure people kind of find their TribLocal home on the site. And there, we also, of course, underneath every post, we have a report flag, so people can flag stuff. And that doesn't get used very much either, because it's really kind of the democracy of the internet. When people, at least in our experience, when they're given a voice like this, they haven't yet abused it, which is great, I must say. But around election season, things start getting pretty juicy, I must say. That's when we have to really step up the monitoring of the submissions.
Can I go? I'm also from a small town, and this sounds like something our county could use, because honestly, our towns are 20 miles apart. How would you go about actually starting one of these hyperlocal news organizations? Because this actually sounds perfect for the three counties that kind of combine in one.
Well, so you go a couple of routes. You could just start a hyperlocal blog. Did you want, let me ask you, did you want to sort of definitely include the citizen journalism aspect?
Well, yes, because my school, we don't have a newspaper. There's many schools that don't have newspapers, and citizen journalism would be something good, because
personally, I'm one of the only people from my school that have ever even considered journalism. We're all about farming, and this would also like give students another opportunity to get their work out there and not just worry about newspapers and that's it. That's all we have.
Okay, well, so the reason TribLocal makes the sign-up process so easy is because we already have a critical mass of potential contributors out there. We didn't want to have to approve everybody who came calling because we'd be approving people all day long every day. So we made the sign-up process very easy, very quick, and virtually automated. But for what you want to do, it sounds like you may be able to recruit a stable of 20 potential citizen journalists, and no more, maybe. Or maybe 10 more over the next 12 months or something like that. It doesn't sound like you're going to have the thousands and thousands that we have, and we do have thousands. So then maybe what you'll want to look at is just a simple blog on WordPress or something like that. And invite, find those 20 people or 15 or even 8 or whatever, and get them signed up as administrators of the blog, and just, kind of get started. Developing your readership is going to be a challenge, though. So what you've got to do is find the common thread, and it might be something as like a highway that links all the towns or something. If you're able to kind of cover sort of an avenue of business or an avenue of transportation really well, that might be an opportunity to show people that they're not as far apart as they might seem on a map. Does that help?
Yeah, it does, because like our local newspaper is actually about 30 miles away, and every single Tuesday it's always opening that Tribune to see if you have your picture in the paper for like a basketball team.
That's right.
So that would be something like that would almost be like a segue almost to use for this type of news.
Right, and if you had a website set up that would allow people to upload their own photos and sort of participate in the news, you could include a mention of that, in the caption underneath that basketball photo, and say something like, "Hey, were you at the big game? Do you have photos? Feel free to post them online at whatever.com," and they may be used in print. So we have a ton of automation built into TribLocal, but you wouldn't have to do something like this on a smaller scale. We just have it all automated because it's easier to do with the staff we have.
I'm from the 3-county part that she's talking about, and in my town, it's like the 400 people movie town you see where gossip just goes, and whether or not we're going to get a stop sign is drama. And a lot of time things do get hateful. How do you monitor, like in such a small town, taking it down if they do post it and it's not appropriate, or people turning it into like back and forth instead of actually just putting up their take on the situation?
Well, that's tough. I mean, you got to first of all, you got to kind of decide what your role would be. You'll notice that my title is community producer. My title is not actually editor. So, you would have to sort of stake out for yourself a role within the community if you were in my position. And you may want to call yourself a community editor or something like that. And then from there, you've got to kind of, develop a sense of respect within the community and let people know that, you're all about fostering conversation, but at the same time, there's only so, they can't walk all over you, and they can't walk all over your website. And, at the end of the day, you do get to say that it's your website and that they don't really have a First Amendment right on your website, They can on their own website, but yours is yours. So, but I mean, that is something that we do run into on TribLocal, is some very opinionated people want to, have their opinions known. And as long as it's not a personal attack or libel or anything like that, we're perfectly willing to host some pretty strong letters to the editor, let's call it that. And so that's okay, but it's when people jump in the comments section and start taking it to the next level, or bringing up something about the alderman's family or something like that. That's obviously a huge red flag for us. So I hope that you don't run into that too much, but you never know. I mean, if they like to gossip, they're going to gossip. And this is one thing interesting that I've sort of been coming to peace with. TribLocal stories don't get a ton of comments because we require registration to comment, right? So you have to sign in, give us your email address and all that stuff to comment. And over the first year, I was really bummed about that because I saw it as a lack of conversation taking place. But then I've seen a few news sites run by competitors around suburban Chicago that don't use any sort of moderated comments, or they don't use a sign-in, I guess. And I've had a lot of people say that those environments are very harsh and they drive off voices that would otherwise participate in the conversation. So it goes both ways, I guess.
I have a question. Does TribLocal have like a social media strategy per se, or the reporters and editors pretty much just do what they see fit with their accounts?
That's a good question. The social media is mostly left to the producers, of which I'm part of that team. I mean, there's about 10 of us, and we tweet throughout the day. We have one main Twitter account. It's at TribLocal, and that account is used throughout the week by various staff members in shifts. And we use that account specifically to tweet headlines and interact with the other news organizations around the Chicago area. So at TribLocal tweets a lot with Colonel Tribune, which is the Tribune's Twitter account. Also interacts a lot with breaking news, that sort of thing. And then from there, whatever TribLocal tweets, the individual community producers, who each have their own Twitter account, they will retweet and discuss and follow up on all of these stories throughout the day. So when we have a big story, like earlier in the week, we had a big story about a guy at a casino slapping Bears wide receiver Devin Hester on the back of the head. Just went up to him and slapped him. Just a little crime brief, It blew up, and we got just crazy traffic off of it. And so we Twittered that thing all day, and it was great. Because it was one of those stories that lends itself really well to tweets. Because you could tweet stuff like, personal foul, hands to the back of the head, that kind of thing. So yes, there is a network, and we specifically as it pertains to Twitter, all of the producers are on a mailing list together, so we can all quickly share information. And when somebody has a hot story, that person will send a request to all the producers, and say, hey, can you please push this out? And within minutes of that going out, 10 or 15 tweets will be scheduled. So we really, I believe, and I don't think this has ever been officially recorded, but I think TribLocal was the first Tribune organization to have sort of a full-fledged staff effort on Twitter. That would have been March 2009 was when we all decided to get going in that. And today I use it as much to push out news as I do to rein in, to hook in news. I'm always on the lookout for things people are tweeting, important things coming up. Road closures are always big, train delays, that kind of stuff. And as far as Facebook, we also have a strategy for Facebook that's pretty interesting. We found that our Facebook readers tend not to like bad news. They don't like crime stuff. They don't particularly like just depressing disaster stuff. So we tend to use Facebook for more featured stories and photo galleries and things that are of regional appeal. So that's kind of the division. Twitter for breaking news / goofy news. Facebook for features and things like that. And also for interacting with readers. Because we frequently find folks who want to post events, like their own event, to our Facebook page, not knowing perhaps that they could also post it online to TribLocal.com. So we frequently run into users there. Yeah, done with that one. I'm checking up on my Twitter here. I'm seeing what I said tweeted back to me. That's fine.
Do you provide any resources to your citizen journalists in terms of making additional training available, like how to conduct effective interviews or AP style crash courses, that sort of thing?
A little bit, in sort of limited ways. We frequently do library workshops around town, and one of the big topics we cover is social media. And as we all know, social media is far from an exact science. So what we do is we just sort of discuss what we do as staff members, and we ask them how that would work with them, and we just sort of trade war stories, I guess. We don't worry about style too much. because we don't ask for a particular style regimen on our site. We just sort of ask that people submit as best they can, because once a story is selected for print, it will get sent to the editors, and then it will be edited up to Tribune standards. So frequently we get some pretty gnarly stuff that has to have some time spent with it, But yeah, so most of it is more about sort of developing enthusiasm and making sure that the technical stuff is not a problem. Because the last thing I would want is for someone who has a lot to write and a lot to say about the community that he or she lives in to be sort of hung up on one mundane step on TribLocal, like the sign-in process or the photo upload process or something like that. So we spend a lot of time answering those questions on the phone and in email.
On your website, I'm seeing like a relatively little amount of ads, like a line ad here or there. So do you get most of your revenue through the print, or do you still get a fair amount through your website?
Most of it, I believe, is through print still, but I know the web revenue is fast growing. I don't know too much about the business side of things, but I do know one really cool thing, which is that, we're in our 4th year, and we will be profitable this year as a department, which is totally awesome. And not many organizations can say that.
That's something that, jumping off your question, I was looking at these ads after you mentioned it. Have you guys ever considered, extending advertisements to businesses in that area? Would that be an effective revenue source? Just off the website? Because right now it just looks like your general Chicago.
Your voice is breaking up. Can you step closer to something?
Oh,
I can't really read you well.
Sorry. Well, I noticed on the website it looks like you just have general Chicago Tribune ads, or I think there's a movie theater ad. There's stuff, but it doesn't seem like any of those are from local businesses. And is that maybe a revenue area that you guys would be interested in or have thought about, advertising to those local businesses in the area?
Well, believe it or not, that is the exact reason TribLocal was started, was to reach those businesses. And sometimes for example, the print edition for the town that you're looking at could be full of ads, because sometimes, I believe, again, I'm not the ad person, but I believe that print and web ads are sold both together and separately. So a client might have just wanted to be in the print edition that was published this morning, rather than the website. Again, it's up to the ad folks to educate them that they should want both of those exposures, rather than just the print. But yeah, to answer your question, I do know that the ad reps go after local businesses and all the time.
So since more of your revenue comes from the print side of things, does the website steer people towards the print, or is it its own beast?
Actually, it's more vice versa, I think. The print edition steers people to the website, because to participate as a citizen journalist in TribLocal, you have to go through the website, you have to sort of find it or have it introduced to you and submit your story online. So we want people very much to find the website, because that's sort of the engine that's going to drive TribLocal from a contributor standpoint, a journalism standpoint. So again, in the print edition, what you'll see a lot are house ads directing folks to the website, house ads instructing them on how to post, that sort of thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Patrick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you talk about some of the things you learned at Mizzou specifically that you've carried over to your job now?
Sure. So, well, guys, I didn't take my college all that seriously. Don't tweet that. But if I could do it all over again, I would apply myself to something a lot better. So I capstoned in magazine design. That's weird, because I'm not designing a magazine, and I'm also not writing either. At Mizzou, I think working on Vox was a great experience, just because you got to kind of be part of the small staff, which I am still part of. Even though TribLocal is part of the Tribune, the actual staff that we get is really small and scrappy, and we're all backpack journalists. We all have the capacity to work remotely using laptops and air cards and things like that. So just that sense of camaraderie and being if not able, at least comfortable with wearing a bunch of hats. That's pretty key. I mean, every day I'm doing stuff that I didn't necessarily get my full education in. Like resizing photos on Photoshop, Twittering, Facebooking, writing briefs, editing when needed. And to say nothing of the whole arduous process of working with citizen journalists. So, really just being ready to sort of do what needs to be done and learn on the fly, that sort of thing. Does that help? Yeah. Sorry, it's been 6 years, 7 years or something. I graduated in 2004. Jeez.
That's great.
Before convergence existed, y'all. Did you know that? back when classes only had 3 letters in them, or 3 numbers. I mean...
That was my day too, that's okay.
3 numbers, like the first numbers?
B1 was 351, B2 was 352, B3 was 353.
It's all true.
4 days was 355.
And all this time I thought the 101 thing was a figure of speech.
Absolutely.
It was in our day.
Anybody else have questions about anything?
Well, I'm looking through your Naperville page a little bit here because I'm from Naperville. From what I'm seeing so far, it looks like you're a pretty text-heavy site. And I know this is more on it, and I know this may be because some multimedia capabilities may be beyond the skills of your community journalists, but what do you do in terms of multimedia, such as interactive graphics, video, what have you?
Well, our site was redesigned in summer of 2010, TribLocal.com, as part of like a really intensive 3-month development process, which is just like an incubation period of nothing for a website. It was churned out in about 3 months, and because of that, they didn't build in a ton of multimedia stuff. With the idea being that we would add that later, and I think the plan is still to add all that stuff. But so currently we can, embed videos and we can do a couple other things like that. But so we can't do like Flash animations and maps and things like that. But luckily what we can do and what we frequently do is link off to other sites that have that. For example, ChicagoTribune.com, the main Tribune website, they build all sorts of fun interactive graphics and databases and things. They built one recently for the school report cards. You could search for your school report card and bring up all the raw data and stuff. And so we aggregate that stuff all the time. So if it's not something we can do, we can at the very least point you to something or somewhere you can get that that information. But yeah, as you point out, it is fairly text heavy. It's like it's currently a repository for news stories. I try to find YouTube videos to aggregate on the site as much as I can, because they're fun, and people like watching them. But one thing that gets us mega hits, and I've talked to a lot of colleagues at newspapers around the country that agree with me on this, but it's that our photo galleries they're just the bomb, y'all. People just love browsing photo galleries, specifically of dogs, specifically wearing Halloween costumes.
We have someone that was just doing it.
I was just
Our
looking at
president
that.
was doing it while you were speaking.
I was browsing the site and I came across that one.
One of those dogs is mine, by the way. So I'll leave it to you to figure out which one.
And I gotta go look again.
Patrick, you had actually said something about aggregating to other. I'm sorry. You had said something about aggregating to other sites. Can you talk a little bit about what your aggregation policies are? Do you only aggregate to ChicagoTribune.com, or do you do that to outside media as well? And what are your policies with that?
Yeah, we aggregate breaking news specifically from any media organization onto our site. The idea being that we want to give our readers the news as it happens, and if we don't have that story, or if we are in the process of assigning a reporter to it, and that the story might be ready in 2 hours, we want to have something on our site that shows we're on top of it. So we're going to aggregate a competitor story in that case. And then if our reporter turns in a story in 2 hours, then we take the aggregation down and promote the reporter written story. And that's kind of been ever since our redesign in summer of 2010, that's been our policy. I don't think we aggregate. One of our competing organizations in the suburbs recently went behind a paywall, and so we sort of stopped aggregating them because it just didn't make sense to point our readers to a collection of websites that they may or may not actually be able to see the story for. But other than that, it's fair game, and we do as much of it as we need to on a daily basis.
Has there been any evidence, even if anecdotal, how that's working for them?
Sorry, say that again?
Has there been any evidence, even if it's just anecdotal, how that's working for them?
For our competitor with the paywall?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. I haven't personally seen the ComScore numbers for them, but it's pretty expensive. I mean, it was like a $20 a month flat rate or something like that. But it just seemed like when I sort of looked at the scheme that they rolled out, we all kind of shook our heads and said, is there $20 worth of content, going on there? So
does that get your home delivery too?
I don't know. I think that might be just web access, the $20 a month. I should check it out. I'll keep talking, but I'll just check it out real quick.
You guys, he's talking about dailyherald.com. If you really want to
yeah,
their
talking about Daily Herald.
It's dailyherald.com. DAILYHERALD.
Subscriber total access. I'll check it out here.
By the way, Patrick, we found Rupert, your good friend.
Okay.
The little bumblebee, you guys can see.
That poor guy. Yeah, okay. So the digital access package is $20 a month. Does not look like it includes the print. And then the total access is online as well as print for something like $1 more per week. So, but again, I'm like you. I'm really curious about how well this is paying off for them, because up until they went behind the paywall, we were aggregating them as often as we needed to fill in holes in our coverage. But since they went behind it, we just sort of had a meeting and realized that at least we talked about it and realized that it just didn't seem like we'd be doing the right service for our readers by linking off to a site that our readers may not be able to access. So.
Any other questions? Anything on your Twitter feed?
I'm just looking. All the reporters are still tweeting stories today. Alligator python seized from Crystal Lake home. Awesome. Well, that's great. I've learned so much about what makes good web stories, what gives them legs and stuff. That part has been fantastic, I must say. Just learning what stories people go for versus the stories that they turn their nose up at is just completely weird and bizarre. And, you would think that a story about raunchy crime or something like that would get the hits, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a gallery of puppy photos that saves the day. And we are my personal metric, that the producers use to measure if we're doing our job is daily hits on our website. So that's the number. We keep track of all of our traffic statistics every day, every week, and we're kind of constantly looking at how stories are doing. So we spend a lot of time looking at that.
The fact that alligator and that python that was seized will obviously be traffic gold. Does that still keep you, though, from pursuing some of those other stories that maybe wouldn't necessarily bring in the same amount of traffic? How do you weigh the journalism part of it?
Right, so the good part about this, the good part is that the web producers don't assign the stories, thank God, or else it would all be alligators all the time. There are full-fledged Tribune editors, classic news people, who assign these stories and work with the reporters, every step of the way. And then they're the ones who assign, again, the alligator story, but also for every alligator story, there's 5 board meeting stories that come out. So thankfully, we cover all the bases. The job of the producers, though, is to identify the stories that will, turn our rocket ship on, our little web traffic rocket, and promote those as much as we can on social media and our website and everything like that. So yeah, we definitely do the journalism, for sure. And we faithfully publish those stories in print as well. But we also are spending increasing amounts of time sort of focusing on the all-star web traffic stories.
Do you see TribLocal as potentially becoming a talent source for full-blown Tribune employees? I mean, I know it's kind of a remote prospect, but do you think that's possible?
Well, absolutely I do, because the reporters we have at TribLocal, work so closely with the Tribune colleagues downtown that their names are spoken on the fourth floor newsroom of the Tribune Tower, which is pretty great. My colleague Jim, the guy who writes for Oak Park, he collaborated last week on a story with the fellow named Ted Gregory from the Tribune newsroom, who was on the Pulitzer Prize winning team 2
If you
years
guys
ago.
are from Chicago and you aren't already reading everything Ted Gregory does, you're making a big mistake. He's probably one of the greatest folks out there. Not to mention he plays a mean game of ping pong.
Yes, air high five to Ted Gregory.
Love Ted Gregory.
Yeah, so he's great, and I'm so jealous of Jim that you got to work with him on that story. I mean, that's pretty great to have your byline just right there next to him. So yeah, and that happens every couple of weeks. There's the reporters. What generally happens is the reporters for TribLocal spend their weeks digging up these hyperlocal stories, and for every 10 stories that they dig up, maybe one of them will make it onto the radar of the regular old Tribune and get picked up and published, that sort of thing. In Jim's case, this story that he wrote with Ted was on the front page, which is completely great. And I try to write personally, as a producer, I don't have a ton of time each week to write, but I try to. So I guess that option's still out there for me, although it's I don't have all that much time to do it. So.
Anyone else?
Oh, should I answer this question? Oh, I already did. Yeah, talent pool. I did that one. Cool.
I have one more question, if that's okay.
Of course.
Do you have a favorite story you've done, or is it just too many to keep track
of? Well, yeah, I do. I do have a favorite story, but it's not for the Tribune. It was for a business magazine that I wrote for beforehand. It was a real estate magazine that covered commercial real estate. It was my first job out of college. I got it off of the Mizzou Mafia mailing list, which you guys should all be on. It's great. And so commercial real estate, right? You think it's really boring. And indeed, it was very boring at times. But I got to travel a lot because my editor, who was a fantastic first editor, by the way, he felt that we should treat commercial real estate, like a real beat and get out, in the community and sort of, get as far from the office as possible when needed to follow a story. So, and we wrote about markets all over the Midwest. So I got to go to Iowa for this one trip, and I got in the rental car and went out to Iowa. And I was going to meet a guy and tour a commercial real estate development that he had put together. And it turned out that he had bought a nuclear missile silo in the middle of the Iowa cornfield and turned it into a data center. So he had this huge 1960s Cold War era concrete bunker, 60,000 square feet, buried in an Iowa cornfield, no way to get into it except for a single shack with a door and an elevator on the surface. And his business partner was this tech geek who got completely rich during the dot-com bubble, and his hobby was Cold War history, and he had sort of gone in on with this other fellow to buy this nuclear missile bunker from the government when it got decommissioned. And it was just so cool to tour this thing, to talk to these two guys, because the one guy was the businessman, the real estate guy. The other guy is just sort of in it for fun. He was in it to have a nuclear missile bunker and to say he owned it. Anyway, it was just really cool. I couldn't even take pictures down there because it was still so secure. But it was really cool. It was exactly what I hoped to do. I'm sure I'll get to do some more of that one day. Any other questions for me? Please ask.
Anything?
I wish I could. What would I have done differently at Mizzou? That's a good question. I probably would have written more, tried to find excuses to write more. I probably would have overcome any fears or trepidations I had about going to some of these events that seem outwardly dull, like village board meetings. And for Oak Park, the Oak Park edition a long time ago, I covered the story of a homeless guy who was removed from the ballot. He was running for village trustee, and he was removed from the ballot because he was homeless, because he had no official address, and they claimed that he had to have an address. And the only reason I found that story was because I sat through several long board meetings that went, into the wee hours of the morning. So I would have done a lot more of that. because it would have served me well later in life. I was on Facebook though, back when you had to have a .edu email address. You don't remember that? Ancient history. God.
All right.
Well, hey, feel free to, you guys tweet me if you want to, at TribLocalPact. And then my actual email address is, you can see it at the bottom of the Oak Park page. There's my member profile with my little smiling face. But it's prollens@tribune.com. So feel free to drop me an email and get on Mizzou Mafia if you're not. I've literally found every single job but one since college on Mizzou Mafia. So it totally works.
Awesome. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, dinner time. Bye.
Yep, bye. Tell everybody in Elmhurst hi.
I will.
Bye.
Thank you guys. There was a sign-up sheet going around. If